Wayne Duvenage, what a pleasure. 10 years at OUTA.
Yeah, that was 10 years ago, 2012.
What a milestone. I mean, when you first went there.
Never expected this. No. Thought it would be a very temporary situation. And we had to form this association of associations because that's how the court process ran with us. A lot of people wanted to be part of that initial case against details. But OUTA was never envisaged to be a long-term project for me, certainly.
Let's step back a little. We were at school together, so we know each other well. From Newcastle, you went to university, Newcastle High, university, and then you were the MD of Avis in South Africa. It's quite a big jump from Avis to joining an NGO that heaven knows how long it was going to last for.
Yeah, it was. I enjoyed my career at Avis. Went through the ranks in the operational side eventually. Left for a while, went back, asked to go back, and became the CEO. Up until from about 2007 to about 2012. And then this whole ETOL debacle was well underway. In fact, from 2010 to 2011, there was a lot of to and fro protest action. SANRAL trying to explain themselves. We were investigating what was going on here, and we decided in 2012 in the beginning we had to take legal action. As an industry, I was chairing the Car Rental Association at the time as well. And the industry said, we can't just sit back and do nothing. It was just fraught with inefficiencies. It was so irrational, costly, and they didn't consult. They didn't do what they had to do. So that was what we hung our hat on from a legal point of view.
But it's still a big move. You had this great corporate career. Fantastic job. People would cut their arms off to try and get a position like that.
Yeah, but
and yet you moved.
I'd been there. I'd been in that role for 5 years, and I'm a firm believer. You start looking for new opportunities to move on. You don't just sit there. And I'd done a lot. We really had enjoyed a good sustainability journey. Introduced, become the first company that was carbon neutral. We had a service excellence program, which was internationally renowned from an Avis point of view. So. Yeah, I'd done a lot, had my time, and was looking to move possibly into the Bala World ranks. But this fight came in from the side, this challenge, and it just brought on something that I couldn't get away from. And I really thought it would be a temporary thing. I really didn't expect to be still here 10 years.
Did they second you from Bala Rand to OUTA?
No,
Did you resign?
Not at all. Well, being the chairperson of SANRAL, the Car Rental Association, then being the chairperson of OUTA, and you still fill these positions. I was on the board of Tourism Business Council as well. So in my role, you play these different roles. And then OUTA decided it needed to fight this, and I was the chairperson there. But at the same time, my day job was CEO of Avis. So it was, it was doing two things, and it was getting stressful. I had to make a decision because, the media were going to press on stories that SANRAL were putting out there. We needed the media to get our views across on this whole ETOL issue. And they couldn't wait for our input. They were going to print, and I was going to meetings. So I sat down and had a long think about it and thought, well, let me extricate myself out of the corporate world for 6 months at least. I thought it would take maybe a year. And get this because it needed full-time attention, and then decide what I'd do after that. I think as the corporate world is out there, a lot of other things were happening. So I sat down with my boss and said, "Look, I think I can't do both. It's becoming quite stressful. Let me resign." We had an exit package which was favourable, and I said, "Once this is over, we'll sit down and talk."
So international service in a way. Because that's really what it has, what OUTA is.
Yeah. Look, this is civil activism, but unusual because we didn't want to just be another NGO. We didn't want to just expose. I think the media does a good job in that space. We wanted to go further and change policy, change irrational policy, tackle government when it was out of line, and introducing conduct that wasn't befitting to civil society at large. But that became the second chapter of OUTA's role. The initial 4 years was to put an end to this grossly irrational and, as far as we're concerned, corrupt scheme, which was overpriced and really wasn't doing this country any favours.
You didn't get off to a great start when you tried to interdict them?
Well, we won the interdict. That put a lot of wind into our sails, but that was the urgency. And then, so we stopped the launch, which was massive. I mean, it was a lot of people asking or having a look and seeing, well, that's good that civil society can make a difference and challenge government. But then the case became very technical, very complex, the Part B of the application, and the courts allowed SANRAL to carry on there mainly because I think it was one of our risks. We'd come late, the money had been borrowed and the roads had been built. They couldn't undo that. But what the Supreme Court did was open the door for us for a collateral challenge. And this is what we needed. After a very bad judgment in the High Court, we had to appeal that. And we also got a cost order against us, which is highly unusual. So we went and appealed that, got the cost order overturned. And the judges really opened the door to say, look, if an individual wants to bring a collateral challenge, a defensive challenge, they can do so. And if the system is found wanting in society's ability to participate in ETOLs, then they cannot be found guilty of transgressing a law, an irrational law. And that's where we decided to go, to defend each and every single individual that got a summons. And that's where the new chapter of OUTA started, which was about 2015, 2016.
Litigation's expensive.
My goodness, I learned a lot through this process. When the lawyers tell you, look, this is going to cost you about R1 million, times it by 10. Seriously.
Wow.
No, this was a 10 million rand case. We weren't even out of the interdict and 3.5 million rand had been spent. It was crazy.
How do you fund something like that?
Well, being at Avis and being head of the industry, we said to the members, this is going to require money. You need to commit yourselves to funding this case. So we all did. All the car rental companies and others put money into the pot, but it wasn't enough. And then after I'd left and we'd lost the case, government lent heavily on business and they ran for the hills. They wouldn't fund us anymore. And we were left high and dry, and that really made me angry. And then we had to turn to where we had to be relevant, and it was the individuals. It was the man in the street. This was their fight, and we had to make it their fight, but they needed to support it.
So you started off based on the support of business, and then government leans on business, which
Heavily.
it does everywhere in the world,
yeah.
not just here in South Africa. Well, it does it.
More so here.
More so, yeah. And then you had to, I guess, reinvent yourself.
Yeah, we had to. We had to call out to business. We had to find new strategy, new processes to make sure that we didn't get one-off donations, that we put in place, we needed to employ people. We needed to get our own legal team in if we were going to defend individuals. We didn't want to have to spend a lot of money with lawyers. We had to build legal capacity processes, and we just reinvented this entire organization. And while we were doing that, people were saying, why just ETOLs? Those days in Kandla was headline news, and state capture, although it wasn't framed as that at the time, was well underway. And then we were asked by our supporters, can't you go broader than ETOLs and fight this corruption and maladministration? And we took a view and said, okay, we kept that acronym, OUTA, which was Opposition to Urban Tolling Alliance at the time, changed it to Organisation Undoing Tax Abuse, and re-strategized, got our structure right, what we wanted to get at the time, and then set out on a journey to say to every individual, we're a non-profit and we are a public benefit, so we can't charge you fees. This is not a legal-wise situation, but we will defend you, every single one of you, on one condition: we have the funds to do so. So come on board and let's take this fight back to government.
Did you have to go to court much?
No, I think once the Supreme Court had ruled and got the cost order against us, then we sat back and reinvented ourselves. We still owed the lawyers about 2 million rand. We said we don't have the funds. We'll either close OUTA down because we just cannot settle that debt. We want to reinvent ourselves without that noose around our neck. So they wrote off that debt, although they had already earned about 8 million rand. So they'd made their money out of us, I can tell you. And then we set out on a new journey and said to the public, this is your fight, but we're going to take it all the way because we'd committed ourselves to seeing the end of ETOLs.
There are lots of people who want to fight on behalf of the public, but very few of them get the kind of support that OUTA received.
Yeah.
What was it that made you different?
Well, I guess, we're not just a watchdog. We were going to be an attack dog. We were going to hold people to account. We were going to hold people who abused their power in government, their feet to the fire. We were not just going to expose. We were going to, if need be, litigate. We were going to take people like Duvenage and have her declared a delinquent director.
Which you did.
Yeah. We were going to stop the corrupt deals, which we did on the BNP Capital deal in SAA. And the Bank of Baroda, who was taking Gupta money, those rehabilitation funds for the mines.
These are big numbers.
These are massive, 1.8 billion there.
Sure.
The nuclear deal that SAFC and EarthLife Africa were fighting, we gave them a lot of support. We'd learned how to use social media well. And there was just so much happening. We were, there's no book for this, not like opening a restaurant. We were testing the waters and seeing, well, what works and what doesn't work. And we were putting online a join up, sign up, and contributors, rather than give us 1,000 Rand once off, give us 100 Rand a month, because we need annuity income. Because what we want to do is bring professionals, and we want to pay them market-related salaries, lawyers, project managers, investigators, and we're going to go and do this in a way that we don't know what it looks like, but we've got an idea and a vision, and we set out.
How long did it take you to get to the scale that you've got now?
So that was in 2016 when we had the strategic review, and we changed the name, and then we set out. We had about 6 or 7 people then, so we'd gone from 3 to 6. We were all non-paid for the first 4 or 5 years. It was just non-executive directors living off our savings and fighting away. But then what we did is we said, let's do this properly.
At this time, you didn't have a full-time job.
No full-time job. And
you were working full-time for OUTA for free.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I was doing a bit of consulting on the side where I got 1 or 2, but they were temporary jobs. I was really digging into our savings.
There must have been something very deep inside you that said you
angry,
righteous indignation.
Frankly, it was frustrating to see that government was going to become the beneficiaries of a very deceitful campaign, and that had to be fought. And as much as I tried to extricate myself, we couldn't. Because we committed to the public. We'll fight this. So long as you contribute, we will continue fighting. And we will go broader. And that's when, so it was about 2016, and then the team started, because the funds started to come in. And SANRAL was probably our best salesman, because they were issuing summonses. People were saying, well, just go to OUTA, they'll defend it, give them the mandate. And we up to about 3,000 cases where the public came to us and says, will you defend me? We said, of course we will. And we ran that through a process that I don't think SANRAL believed we could do, which was defend every single one of the cases. And what the court said was, well, we can't have 3,000 cases. Let's go into a test case process, which we were all ready to do. And then they pulled the plug, which, they've shot themselves in the foot, quite frankly. And that was the end of the litigation process.
So since that period, no more attempts have been made by SANRAL to summons
So no more blacklisting. They can't. There's no credit bad ratings. Nothing can come of this because of the fight that we bought. What they are doing is sending out final demands, but the compliance rates, which were supposed to be up in the 90s, never got over 40 by June 2014, and sitting at about 15% compliance now. It's really a handful. They're hardly covering the cost.
And the pivot into the new OUTA, focusing on tax abuse.
Yeah.
Was it ever a decision for you to perhaps not do that? Now, given that you'd really sacrificed a great deal in those first 4 years, was there an option of perhaps going back into the corporate world? And
that was the decision we had to make. I had to make a decision and say, look, either go into the corporate world, and I was still consulting for a couple of days a week at that stage, or we make this work. In which case it needs to pay market-related salaries for myself, the directors, and all the administrators and project managers that were coming on board. So if that worked, I was going to stay. If it wasn't going to work, then we're going to have to find somebody to head it up so that I can get back into earning a living again, because it had been a long journey, a long slog, and it worked. It worked well, and then we started the process of getting proper governance, getting our non-executive directors, putting King 4 processes in place. It was a lot, building an NGO with a corporate mindset of getting proper structure and governance in place. That wasn't an overnight process. That was like building a car while you're riding it down the highway. It was tough. And then we were changing strategy and had square pegs in round holes, and people had to move or put into new structure. That was, I promise you, the most challenging period from about 2016 to 2018-19. It was really, really tough, but we got through all of those hurdles. We dabbled in local government and decided we're going to do that another way. So we've had some great experience. You could write a book on how to do civil activism unusual, quite frankly. That's what it is.
Before we move on to the other stuff, at the time, people forget 2015, 2016, it were dark days for South Africa. Zuma was in control. The Guptas were running things. They had the board at Eskom. They were squashing anybody who raised any objection to them, because it was a big game they were playing with lots and lots of money.
Yeah.
At any time, did you fear for your safety?
No, we didn't, because we had multiple spokespersons. OUTA was bigger than one person by then, and we enjoyed the fight. We had this.
I know you, and I know you would enjoy it. So it's not like a dog. Words.
It was it was brilliant.
You're a Rottweiler, not a poodle, I'd say. Yeah.
The energy was high, and whistleblowers were starting to hear about us. We were getting information. So Cynthia Stimple gave us information on the BNP Capital deal going down. We stopped that in its tracks. Dudumyeni called our bluff. We lodged papers to go to court. Then they quickly pulled back. And so, lots of things like that were unfolding. Rosatom coming at the country with nuclear. We had to expose that. So we put videos together and worked with SafeC and them. And it was really good energy. And then 2017, the famous Gupta leaks landed, and we got a copy of that, started to put reports together for Parliament to show and expose Jacob Zuma, not on the basis of media statements, now on what was happening in the real world.
Gupta leaks, I remember, it was a little bit like, jeepers, we've been fighting this fight, and now here comes the cavalry. Almost like you were at the point of exhaustion, those who were in the battle. And clearly you were right on the front line.
And everything was based on information, but the Parliament and the ANC could just say, well, let's hearsay, and this is a political agenda. But once the Gupta leaks landed, there was all the evidence. There were all the emails, the bank statements, the notices that were given to Zuma as to who to put into various positions, and how deep and in control the Guptas really were. That was like a gold mine for us.
Well, it was divine intervention. I think. It was. How else do you explain it?
It was.
Here comes a server that gets given to a second-hand, a bit like this Hunter Biden thing, second-hand computer dealer. He throws it away. The Malawian gardener picks it up, fixes it.
Yeah.
Now, that guy needs a medal, but I guess we'll never know the full story there.
Sure.
But getting back to OUTA post Gupta leaks, post as Ramaphosa came into power, we had Ramaphoria in South Africa. Do we really need an OUTA anymore at that stage? My goodness.
Yeah.
You've proven that we certainly do.
Yeah, we had looked at our strategy and said, well, we need to re-strategize. This was on our risk register now, and we said, look, quite frankly, if OUTA didn't have to exist, we were also going to be happy, because we want nothing better than to have a corrupt-free society and government, and an efficient government. But as it turned out, it wasn't to be. We had to stay the fight. Who's in power today, not necessarily in power tomorrow. And that's what we saw with Zuma. So we continued to do what we had to do, knowing that things aren't going to change overnight. And we also started to reinvent ourselves to say, look, besides being this attack dog on corruption and maladministration, let us start to be engaging. Let us start to be solution-based, solution thinking. Let us engage with government at various levels, and not just attack. Attack where you need to, but let's try and do this with a multi-pronged approach. And that's what we started, reaching out to DGs, to ministers, to try and find solutions. But
did it work better?
It started to, certainly over the last couple of years. We are finding that the committees in Parliament are inviting us and looking at our input, and we can see that we're making inroads in those areas. We do get requests from various people in different levels of authority engaging with us constructively and proactively now. So it's working, but it's a bit of trepidation always, because they're not sure how OUTA is going to deal with them. But if they are corrupt, if they're found wanting, they know we'll go after them. If not, and they're serious about changing policy to suit society, we're all ears to work with them, share our research. And that's what we're doing now with the NRCS, trying to get proper process in place for greater efficiency for business, working with BUSA. Big project that. It'll change efficiencies in doing business in this country if we get that one right.
At the Business Conference, you opened the eyes of everybody in the audience by showing us the accounts of the state-owned enterprises had been doing exactly what a Steinhoff did. In other words, inflating assets, borrowing against inflated assets, and leaving the taxpayer with this huge hole that who knows how it's going to be filled. Is that also part of the game, or do you need whistleblowers to come along to OUTA and say, we think you need to investigate this?
So it's two-pronged. We whistleblowers give us information and direction to look at, and then we can't take that at face value. We've got to get real information as we build cases. But how that expose came about was we started to look firstly at SANRAL to say, why are these companies, investment houses, investing in these government bonds to the extent that they are? And suddenly we saw, all we did was all the SOEs, we went back over 8 years or so, and we said, look, put their financials into a spreadsheet and see the trends. How much is Treasury giving them? How much are they getting from their toll portfolios? And so we just saw this massive inflation in assets. And then we saw the same at Denel and Eskom and Transnet. And we said, well, here's a modus operandi, got hold of finance people, and they explained, look, from an IFRS point of view, that's nothing wrong with that so long as those assets are realizable. And then we said, but how realizable are South Africa's roads as an asset? I mean, SANRAL can't sell these roads. So while that might be the case of replacement value, and that's what they can be put into your books at, if I was an investor, I would be saying, trying to treat this like a JSE listed company and say, well, this is not realizable, so I can't invest. But what they did was look away from that because those bonds were backed by government guarantees and the interest rates were healthy. So I literally, Alec, blame the investment houses and the banks for giving those SOEs the money because they should have asked tough questions and they should have walked away. Now, they need to be part of the solution because we need to get government to revalue those bonds, renegotiate terms. There's something has to happen, but we just cannot allow them to get away with it.
I'm sure you remember Andrew Cantor from Future Growth when he raised questions and he was squashed by Old Mutual. But there's something really sad behind the scenes when exactly what you've said, the person who does ask the questions gets told to shut up. And that's why you need OUTAs, I guess, to be keeping,
to raise these concerns and to say, look at this. And in fact, recently met with somebody who's doing work advising government to say, explore that avenue. Go back to the people who took these bonds out and say, why did you do that? Knowing that those assets could never be valued. You gave that money on the basis, not of those balance sheets, on the basis that these are government
guarantee. So you got a government guarantee. Who needs to look at balance sheets?
Yeah, and that's wrong. And that's the weakness in SOEs. And that's when you don't run SOEs properly, like businesses, and you just banking on government bailing out, you're going to have SAA, Denel, all the stuff that we've got in a 500 billion rand debt hole in just four SOEs for this country.
So your job is not done. Your work is not over. No. What's OUTA looking like in the next 5 years? I suppose first question, are you going to be retiring anytime soon?
Look, this is fun. I don't, I enjoy this. So no plans to retire, maybe change angle, change tack. But from an OUTA point of view, we continue with this, what we call this accountability division, with these legal project managers getting information from whistleblowers, building cases against people who are either in the business side and in government doing deals. So that's the one side, and we've got a number of projects there. But what we have started to do is to say, introduce what we call citizen science into finding solutions for government. So for instance, we just launched WaterCan. And this is, we cannot trust government's information on water quality, both the effluent going into rivers and drinking water. So, and the timeliness of that, and we've seen in a few projects, they've been found wanting, that's local government and provincial. So we're going to introduce a heat map that has all the information across the country on our water quality, run by citizens through a formalized process, accurate process, and timeliness process, of which government and all stakeholders can have access to the information. And we're going to do the same thing with community action networks, we call it, where resident associations follow the similar process so that we network them and we give them the powers and understanding of how they can tackle local government, hold them to account for the waste of taxpayers' money in local government, municipalities and metros. And then we've launched a little app that really helps all municipalities receive information around breakdown of infrastructure, traffic lights, water leaks, sewage leaks, and it's free to the municipality and it's free to the public, and we want to launch that soon.
You got a heck of a lot on your plate. That's at the local level. Clearly, at the government, the central government level, there's plenty to work on as well. How do you prioritize?
Well, we've got a great team. Hey? There's 43 staff, got an excellent exco, a good board, and you know, as I say, 43 people working in structures with systems and processes, project management processes, and it just flows. It's got better and better with every year. But now we've got to fund these new developments and platforms. So we've taken a bit of the funds that we put into litigation war chests and that to get these things up and running so that they can finance themselves over time, just so that we cover the administration costs. That we're still a non-profit organization. We still have Section 18A certification for all our donors. So we're not taking our eye off the ball. We're just finding different ways and better ways to become part of the solution for this country and involving citizens, making them more active than they are, giving them the powers and understanding how much they should and could be doing.
Good laws, but not always well implemented. Wayne, you did mention 18A. Perhaps you could just explain how that works.
Yeah, so we are tax exempt, and we have been classified by SARS as a Section 18A non-profit entity and a public benefit organization. So anyone who donates to us can retrieve their funds back through. At the end of the tax year, we give all our donors a tax certificate, an 18A tax certificate. They put it down as a donation, and they can get their money back. Obviously, it reduces that amount that they would pay tax on the taxable portion on that contribution to us. So it's nice because I think people like donating to us, but now, you know, it's government funding that donation. And I think government, that's why those laws are put there. We're doing good for society. We're doing good for the country.
Yeah. And as we close off this conversation, when you look back in 5 years, what would you like to see? You've had some massive highlights in the last 10 years as you've unpacked some of the really big changes that you've made to society. Just think of the Russian Rosatom nuclear deal. If you hadn't been involved, we'd be bankrupt now. If Dudu Myeni had remained at SAA, who knows what damage she would have caused. And there are many like that. But if you look back in 5 years, would you be keen to see some big milestones like that?
Yeah,
or would there be other priorities that
there will be new because they come along, but hopefully OUTA is sorted. Hopefully this demerit point system is functional and done properly. It is worse than ETOLs from a failure point of view. Hopefully electoral reform has come along. Now, we're not in the political space, but one way of changing this country is to get the right people through an electoral reform reshuffle or revamping so that people who mean something to constituencies get into power, not ANC lists of people who we don't know who are now going to represent us in Parliament. So we've worked with the New Nation movement, who we got that court case and that ruling 2 years ago. Parliament are way behind where they should be. So it's in that space, that's policy stuff that we're working on. Water is a big thing. This country, if we think we've got a problem with electricity, wait for what's happening with water. So hopefully we can get government to sit up and make sure that we're investing in water properly. And just so many other things. At the same time, we'd like to see, and we want to put together a platform that exposes all people found wanting, so they can't play musical chairs within government. If you've been fired from this department or that municipality, you should not be able to find your way into other places in government. So this cadre deployment thing, putting some brakes on in that space, finding new ways of doing that. It's amazing how much can be done. We just need to put the systems and processes in place to bring citizens on board and say, this is your organization, use it, work it, and make sure it works for you.
And how many citizens are on board?
Well, we've got about 28,000 people donating to us. That allows us to have the 45 staff. 70% of our costs come from the staff complement. This is all about people energy. And we would love to double that. So it's crazy that we don't have 50,000 or 100,000 people supporting us.